Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This video we're going to talk about shifting points of aim with the RDS handgun. So this is a part 2 on our last RDS video, speaking specifically about managing the dot inside the window, if you will. How to kind of read what the dot is telling you based on performance and kind of embracing the wobble, if you remember that video. In this video we're going to talk specifically about shifting our points of aim. And that could be in regards to transitioning to a totally different target versus, or I should say, or tracking one target that's moving, and how that it's fundamentally different, and there's some different application of techniques that have to take place than your traditional iron sight use. There is a distinct difference in the fundamental approach to transitioning points of aim with an RDS equipped handgun than, say, an iron sight equipped handgun. And there's a little bit more difficulty in it, or I should say, you have to refine your technique a little bit more with the handgun versus a rifle. Because remember, rifle, we've got those 4 points of contact, so our eye, more or less with our cheek welds good, stays in relation to the optic more or less where it needs to be. Parallax may be an issue, but not nearly as large as it can be as far as optic to eye acquisition and alignment as it is on the handgun, because we only have those 2 points of contact. But with iron sights, how do we transition from target to target? One of the most efficient ways, or I should say point of aim to point of aim, because we may not be shifting off a target so much as transitioning between two desired points of impact on that target, say going from the chest to the head or the head to the chest, or whatever your desired switches are. But it could obviously be in relation from one target strictly to another target. And the movement that you have to make, that has to take place, depends on how extreme that transition is, and we'll get to that. So with iron sights, one of the most efficient ways I've seen, and the way that I teach it, is I'm front sight focused, I get my desired hits. Now if I choose to shift, or if I'm forced to shift, I'm going to refocus off that front sight. I'm going to reaccommodate and focus on my threat. Track my threat to where they're going, or track my eyes to where I want the gun to go. And then I'm going to move my entire sight package over there, confirm alignment, go back to front sight focus on my desired point of impact, and continue shooting. So there's a lot of focal plane reaccommodation that has to take place in order to transition from target to target if we're using iron sights, be they on a handgun or them on a rifle. With the red dot, we don't have to do any of that. But getting used to that can be problematic if you're not practicing as efficiently as you can. So the whole point of this video is hopefully to help you practice it more efficiently so it takes you less rounds to reach that level of proficiency that you want. The biggest hurdle to overcome is going to be getting out of maybe the learned Ingram or what some people would refer to as muscle memory or reflexive memory. I don't like either of those terms really, but we'll go with learned technique or unconscious competent technique of coming off the target, or I should say coming off the front sight like we do with iron sights, and then tracking over and then refocusing. We can stay threat focused the entire time. We don't have to worry about reaccommodating our eyes, but because the RDS window, in my case the RMR window, is there may be a tendency for beginning shooters on red dot equipped handguns to at some point focus on the physical body of the optic for some reason. It's kind of a phenomenon, I don't really understand it, but talking to students in classes who are shooting the RMRs and in my own personal experience early on when I first adopted the RDS, for some reason I would do that. And I think it comes back to once my eyes moved to my target, I was going into that learned habit of re-establishing my sight alignment and then my sight picture on the iron sight. So my eyes were just like, okay, we've moved to the threat, now let's refocus on the gun, correct what we got to correct, go back to the threat, then come back to the front sight, get our sight picture, and shoot. And that's inefficient in regards to the RDS because you don't need to do any of that. You literally just need to stay threat focused or stay target focused and move to your new point of aim. Now there could be some slight reaccommodation that needs to take place in the eyes based on if the 2 points of aim are on the same distance plane as each other. So if I'm just shifting as a target moves, strafes if you will, from side to side but stays at the same distance, there may be a slight reaccommodation that needs to take place if, say, I'm shifting from a close target to a slightly further away or a further away to a slightly closer. Now, those distances respective to your distance from the targets themselves will kind of determine how much reaccommodation has to take place in the eye, and this is something you have to experience for yourself. It's been my experience that the eye refocuses faster the further things are away from you. But if you're going from something super close to something far away, there's going to be a slight difference in your eye's ability to focus on the target. But that's going to be a very personal issue that comes with practice. What we want to focus on is making sure we move the dot in the gun in the most efficient way possible. This is a representation of what I'm talking about. I need to shift my RMR, in this case my RMR, between these two targets, and I want to do it efficiently. And I'm going to stay threat focused the entire time. Now, one of the tendencies that you may have when shifting the window is to keep your vision through the window in order to make the shift. And that is one technique that you can use. My personal approach to it, and what I found to be more efficient, is to actually shift my eyes out of the window, because they can move a little bit faster than my hands can, and then bring the window back into my field of view, much in the same way that you would do with your iron sights, only we're going to stay threat focused the entire time. I found it's much more efficient to shift the eyes and then bring the gun to my eyes than it is for me to look through the window and drive the window to the target. Reason being, and just in my experience and what I've gotten from students who have taught on this system, is if you keep your focus through the window of your optic, there's a tendency to overshoot your target. Ocular over travel or mechanical over travel, there's a couple different terms applied to it in regards to bypassing that which we want to shoot and then being forced to come back to it. It's been my experience, the same with iron sights, same with RDS. If I take my eyes out of the window, shift them to my desired point of aim, and then move the optic over to where I'm looking, it's much more efficient that way. If you think about it, that's not unlike how you acquire the dot from the draw stroke to begin with. I'm focused on my threat, the gun comes out, it's presented, and if I'm doing everything correctly and my practice and everything is proficient, then the dot is going to appear superimposed over my desired point of impact based on the quality of my eye-hand coordination and the context and the relativity of the distance to the target. I think everybody's familiar with what this is. This is a speed rack, a plate rack, a racing rack, a bunch of different terminology which seems to be geographically specific, but that's kind of beside the point. This is a great training aid if you have access to one or if you can afford one and put it on your own property. If you don't, hopefully you can find some time in your life to be able to shoot this. Now, this is a steel reactive target, which means if the round hits it, plate falls down. Everybody's pretty familiar with that, or if not, you are now. The concept behind this is, what most people use it for, is to shoot the plates as fast as possible, to knock them down as fast as possible. Now you can go from right to left, left to right, outside to inside. You can build all kinds of different procedures out of this. But this is a great tool procedurally to learn how to shift points of aim from target to target to target to target to target. Now, they come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes. I like the size of these plates because they're roughly the same size as a really good center mass, if that's your definition, high thoracic, my definition, hit on a human threat. And you can paint them white, and the bullets will roughly, leave a little mark so you can see where you hit and how far you were off the desired point of impact that you had. Now, these things can devolve quickly into a game, especially if other shooters are present. It becomes a race, which is fine. I enjoy a good speed rack race as much as the next guy, but as a training aid, what I'm trying to do is couple two things. How fast I make my transition and how accurate my transition was from point to point to aim. I'm not looking to hit the entire plate so much as I'm looking to hit the center of the plate. And sometimes we forget or we don't think about that aspect of shooting, especially when we're trying to shoot fast. We just start shooting for the plate itself when I'm still desiring to put that round roughly in the middle of the plate as well as I'm able. It's been said that steel makes you fast, but paper keeps you honest. A little can of spray paint, steel can do both, especially when it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to get or even attempt to get more than one hit per plate as I transition, because this steel, 9mm, even 115 grain, almost anywhere you hit it on the plate, it's going to go down. The goal here is to see how efficient I can maintain my point of aim and point of impact as I move from plate to plate to plate to plate. So now, using the plate rack to build that point of aim to point of aim shift that we're talking about with the RDS. You remember from the first video on this topic, we talked about the natural dot movement, that natural trimmer movement that seems exaggerated by the dot because it's floating in the window. And we already know that same movement exists on iron sights. It's just not as evident because of the fact that the iron sights don't float independently of the firearm. My goal is going to be to shoot center mass of each plate. So the very center of the plate. I'm selecting center of the target offered to selected, proper definition of center mass. And I'm going to try to transition as fast as I can. But when I'm building my technique, I'm not going to try to shoot the plates as fast as I can. I'm going to try to shift my point of aim as fast as I can. So the speed is going to be relative to the distance at which I'm shooting the plates. I'm not going to push the envelope until I've developed a solid technique of being able to move from plate to plate to plate to plate to plate to plate, so on and so forth, while maintaining roughly a desired point of aim, point of impact. So let's take a look at our hits. cadence wasn't that fast. Transitions weren't that fast, so I wasn't really going for that. But even at that slow rate of speed, I had some hits that I'm not necessarily happy with. And that's okay, because I'm here to practice, I'm here to work on that. Now, what was the mission? The mission was to hit one plate with one round, transition, next, so on and so forth, repeat until I cleared the entire rack. Mission accomplished, but from a personal standard, when I think about my own deliberate practice, I'm not happy with my point of impact. So I would continue at that cadence until I was consistently getting the round roughly in the middle of the plate. That's not a good one. That's not a good one. That's what I want on every single plate, as well as I can, as possible as I can. Unlike the initial shot from the holster. That first shot from the holster, there's no history there, but no recoil has occurred, but there's still a lot of movement involved in settling the gun, getting the dot, and going through the fundamentals in order to break the shot. Once that first round has been fired, and I consider that to be the hardest round to shoot, all my movement is roughly, at least in regards to the plate rack, isolating the skill set, is roughly going to be horizontal. So I don't have a lot of other outside interferences in the skill isolation that I have to worry about. Now, that'll come later once I get my proficiency in place. If you can't do this on a plate rack, you can do it on 6 pieces of paper, 6 3x5 cards, whatever desired size you want at whatever desired distance you want. If you want to run it on a shot timer, you can, because then you can get an idea of how fast you're able to complete it. But what I want to do now is kind of pick up the pace a little bit and see if my performance changes in any meaningful way. So I picked up my rate of speed a little. And if you notice, the first 3 were a little bit slower than the last 3 because I really fell into my dot's horizontal alignment, allowed me to speed up. First hit was more or less textbook. That's what I wanted. Second hit was extremely low because I tracked the dot down through the settling of the recoil. I over pushed the gun and broke the shot. I recognized that because I was paying attention, isolating. The only thing I was worried about is what the dot was doing when I pulled the trigger. So I was deliberately isolating one of those aspects to see where things were going to go. Had I just been trying to hit the plates, I may not have consciously noticed that's what caused that. Now I'm a little high. This one, I broke the shot, was immediately trying to track to the next plate, so I hit on the leading edge. And those are my last 2 plates. So my speed was a little bit better, but my accuracy obviously didn't really improve. I'm still meeting the goal of hitting the plate itself, but I'm not necessarily meeting the goal of hitting dead center of the plate like I'm trying to do with every single round I fire. Of course, proficiency is going to be developed with practice and adherence to your standards. I can't just say my standard is to hit the center of the plate. I have to physically try to do it, and I have to avoid the urge to race from center to center to center to center to center. What I want to do is take as little as time as possible to transition from plate to plate, but once I get the dot roughly focused on that plate and doing its little wobble thing, I want to center it as much as possible and then break my shot and then move on. I'm not ready to go to failure speed yet. I'm not ready to see how fast is too fast, but now I want to see how fast I can push myself to get a hit on every single plate while consciously trying to hit the center of each plate that I shoot. So I was just on the line of appreciable speed, and we're talking tenths or hundredths of a second. There's only a few of these hits, as you can see, that were outside of where I wanted to hit. I still hit the plate, so mission accomplished, but the mission inside the mission, if you will, or the main objective inside the mission was to hit the center of the plate, which I did fail more than one time. So I'm not going to count it as a win just because I knocked the plate down. Now your measure of accuracy based on the relative performance that you're trying to achieve may be a little bit different. But this, I could probably have gone slightly faster, but as you can see on some of these hits, had I gone slightly faster, I may have thrown the round completely. And I want 6 rounds for 6 plates, because that's kind of the isolated standard that I'm holding myself to, the skill set that I'm working on. Now I need to see how fast is too fast. Now my goal this time is going to be to shoot it as fast as I possibly can. Knowing that I might miss a shot, I'm going to purposely push myself beyond what I think is my fastest transition speed from plate to plate to plate to plate to plate. Because if I don't know how fast is too fast, I don't have a goal to work on. If I know that I can clear all 6 plates in say 3 seconds from the draw at whatever distance I choose, and that's all I ever do, then my improvements are going to be measured in hundredths of a second plus or minus from that average. I want to see how fast is too fast. I want to have the wheels fall off. Because if I don't know what my maximum level of performance is, like I said, I don't really have a goal to work on. So that was too fast. How do I know it was too fast, beside the fact that I completely missed 2 plates? Because I felt the optic body getting away from me. I felt the fact that I was pushing the dot too extreme, pushing the gun too far past. I wasn't allowing my movement to settle. I was able to track the plates with my eyes that fast and move the gun and move the gun and move the gun and move the gun and so on and so forth. But I was pushing the gun past or before. I know specifically on this plate, it was a high right miss. On this plate, it was or I should say, high left miss. On this plate, it was a high right. Focusing on what I'm trying to do helps me understand where the dot was at the exact moment I broke the shot. As far as my overall accuracy, there's not an appreciable difference between these hits on these plates. If we wanted to go with a statistical average on the hits and the plates I've done at slower rates of speed. So the issue, I find, isn't so much the transition as it is settling the optic and settling the dot at the desired point of impact before I break the shot. So now we're moving off the steel onto paper, because paper is going to keep us honest and it's going to help us add more context. Now, my definition of practical accuracy, my definition of precision accuracy is going to remain in relation to the human form, the human body. Got our 8.5 by 11 piece of papers up again. That's a good contrasting point of aim if that's something that you want. You don't necessarily have to have it. I'm putting it there because it's easier to see for filming sake. This is going to be my practical region of accuracy, that high thoracic cavity where there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't react well to gunfire. What I want to avoid the urge, and what I've observed as an instructor that people have the urge to do, is once the target sizes increase, especially when we're just working on getting hits, people's shot groups tend to spread out further than they necessarily have to. Now, distance and speed may keep you from being able to get that one ragged hole however many rounds you fire, but you should still have that desired result in mind. We should always be striving for that, even if it's not necessarily practical. Aim small and miss small is something that's said often a lot, but we get a little tone deaf to stuff like that. So it's good every now and then to kind of have a little bit of self-reflection. Remember, I'm trying to put all these bullets as close together as possible while trying to get them all to the target at the same time, if that makes any sense. So even though the white piece of paper is my desired point of impact for practical accuracy, I'm still going to give myself some degree of precision accuracy, maybe take a marker or something like that. Now, where is a zone of consistent precision accuracy on the body? I would consider that to be the head. The head is always, to me, going to be a zone of precision accuracy, even though we can go even more precise on the head. You've got the cranial vault, which is a good place to shoot, but that off switch is going to be roughly center behind the nose, slightly larger behind and above, or I should say just above the eyes, not behind the eyes. There's not a lot of brain mass behind the eyes themselves, depending on your angle of the shot. So practical accuracy, precision accuracy, and then I've got precision accuracy inside of precision accuracy. It's an inception of gunfire. The goal here is to transition between these two targets while maintaining a similar cadence relative to the distance at which I'm shooting from, because obviously the further back I get, the slower my cadence is probably going to be if I want really good hits. Now, how fast relatively that cadence can be is based on skill set, which I think everybody can kind of understand. But relatively speaking, proper use of that term, I want to shoot as fast as I can. And I want to get hits on both of these targets as fast as I can. Now, to start off, I'm just going to work on transitioning practical accuracy from point of aim to point of aim. The difficulty is going to be maintaining the discipline to settle the dot at least a little bit in order to make sure that when I transition over to this target over here, I'm still getting good, solid, consistent hits. Shoot it from a couple different distances just to see how it goes. So here's our end result. Cadence was good. Rounds on target, time to rounds on target was good. I was pretty happy with it. I could probably be a little bit faster, but as you can see, first target engaged, the shot group is not bad. It could obviously be way better. Remember, we're going for that one ragged hole. I mean, that's always our goal, even if we can't necessarily get it. But the consistency on my second target was better. Now, I know why that is, because I know what went wrong, or I should say what went inefficiently, because my goal was practical accuracy, goal achieved. My underlying objective, the mission within the mission, if you will, was to get them all on that black dot, at least on this target, or obviously on both targets. That would have been achieved closer here than it would here. What happened was press through that second recoil curve, and then just kind of fell apart a little bit. And at that point, I was just kind of trying to get the hits fast so I could transition to my second target. Once I got over to my second target, my fundamentals had come together and they were working in a much better harmony to deliver better results. All things considered, these are two reasonable groups at the cadence that I shot them at, but I can obviously do better. So mission accomplished in a way. First target, 5 rounds, pretty good. We don't have that one ragged hole, but that's okay, because again, we're going for practical accuracy, generally speaking. Precision accuracy was what the ultimate desire was. So my point of aim, because I gave myself one, pretty good. Now, when I transitioned over to my second threat, my first round was pretty much garbage. But then I was able to kind of correct it a little bit. But again, zero contrast in that desired point of practical accuracy. I wasn't able to maintain maybe the same precision. Actually, this one appears to be a little bit tighter. So I would say that my fundamentals had come together once I picked up the second target. But I did rush my transition, which is why my first round was kind of pathetic. So now we can add some more distance to it. The thing to remember about transitioning, especially between two targets respective distances apart, the closer you are to the two angles that you have to work with, the more extreme your movement is probably going to have to be. And if we're talking about human threats, the slower, or I should say the faster that you have to react, because you have less reaction time based on your distance to the threat. As we get further back, we don't have to transition as far, but our accuracy obviously matters a little bit more because it's harder to hit the target because we're further away. And that's something that we have to factor in. There's a lot of fluid techniques that you can work in as far as physiology goes in transitioning from threat to threat. Most important thing to remember about the dot, again, is to drive from outside the window. Don't get sucked into looking through your glass and driving with the glass itself. Some people may disagree with that. That's the way that I tend to teach it, because I found that it gives the best results faster than other methods that are out there. So the objective was practical accuracy, distances, transition, target to target, maintaining a reasonable cadence respective to the point of aim we were trying to reach. Mission accomplished. Could these groups be tighter? Absolutely. And that's one thing that we constantly have to work on, constantly have to practice on, is being able to meet the standard as fast as possible with the tightest group that we're able to achieve. That was practical accuracy. Now, what about precision accuracy? When it comes to precision accuracy, you can either isolate a precision region. In my case, when I'm always thinking about being self-defense focused, I just go for the head or that brainstem area of the head for extreme critical accuracy, depending on how many levels of what you consider to be precision accuracy you want to introduce into your shooting. Or I do something that's kind of a modification on a box drill. The box drill, if that's what you want to call it, practical, precision, practical. Use 2 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets, how many targets you want to introduce. And you can change up the variation of what your transitions are going to look like. So I'm going to be going from practical to precision to practical and back. And I can run that box as many times as I want, or as many rounds per point of impact, or point of aim, I should say, as I want, and work on building cadence and speed. Now, the transition from here to here isn't so extreme, but it's a vertical transition. And then over here is a horizontal transition. So now I've introduced the 2 axes, if you will, of the type of point of aim transitions we have to make with the RMR, or with the RDS, into my practice with just 2 targets. Now, this doesn't have to be, like I said, ammunition intensive. I can do 1 round per, 2 rounds per, 3 rounds per, whatever your ammo is going to allow. The most important thing to remember is maintain that objective. If this is going to be practical accuracy, maybe you can shoot it a little bit faster, but when it goes to the head, that default kind of precision accuracy region, you might have to, based on distance, slow it down just a little bit. And that brings us to the end of part 2 on our series on maximizing our efficiency with the RMR on the handgun, or the RDS on the handgun. The next video, we're going to talk about introducing some more realism into the way that we practice with the RDS on the handgun. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.